Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to Apple Tech Talks. And today we're going to be talking about my personal opinions and thoughts on WWDC 2018. So unfortunately this year I didn't do a predictions video because I was studying for finals. I was really busy. I didn't really have time to compile a very detailed list as I normally do. But this video is just going to be my thoughts and impressions of what they announced at WWDC. A little bit of an underwhelming event. I wouldn't say that I'm disappointed because that would be an overstatement, but I'm just a little bit surprised, I guess, that there's no hardware that was announced at this event, but that's okay. So basically, if you didn't know, we got the announcement of iOS 12, macOS Mojave, watchOS 5, and tvOS, I believe, 10. And I will be going through all of these today, talking about the new features in each one, what you may or may not have known about these announcements, and also my personal thoughts on each one. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. So first, let's start with the elephant in the room. That is iOS 12. So the main focus of iOS 12 is optimizing performance and stability. So there's a lot of in-performance changes that Apple is making for iOS 12. This include just a faster, more responsive experience. The things you do most often, like swipe to your camera, opening an app, clicking to type when the keyboard slides up. The things that you do every day are just faster and much more smooth across all devices. So iOS 12 is specifically focusing on the performance on the older devices such as the iPhone 5S and the iPad Air, so it's a more responsive experience across the board, regardless of what device you might have. There are also going to be some smoother animations, so like I said, when you're going through Control Center, Notification Center, multitasking, or scrolling in apps, it's just going to be a much more fluid and seamless animation. And like I said before, 40% faster app launch is what Apple is claiming. So you launch apps, and if it can be a stock app, it can be a third-party app, they're just going to launch much faster. Multitasking between lots of apps is much faster. Apple claims in some instances your apps will actually launch up to twice as fast. Also, when you click the share sheet, if you want to share a file or picture or something like that, it will load up to 2 times faster. The next feature of iOS 12 is FaceTime. So group FaceTime is finally coming, which I actually didn't expect Apple to do like ever. But it's here now, finally. Group FaceTime, you can make FaceTime calls with up to 32 participants simultaneously. It's pretty dang awesome. I wouldn't obviously conference 32 people, but I could FaceTime, 8 of my friends at once or something like that. And the way it works, the UI, I think Apple did a very good job with the UI. Most companies wouldn't be able to do it in such a creative way. You can also join anytime, so while you're making a call, you can join or add people to that FaceTime call. If you have an iPhone 10, you can use the Animoji feature within the FaceTime call, and people will be able to see that you have a very different, interesting face, whatever that might be. And there are also a lot of filters, text effects, shapes, iMessage stickers that you can all put in on your image when you're FaceTiming someone. I think that's very interesting. So now let's go on to messages. So messages didn't get a huge overhaul, but there are a couple of things that are different, including you can now create sort of like an Animoji of your own face, similar to Snapchat's Bitmoji. You basically create a Memoji, an animated emoji of yourself, moving around and things like that. And I think that's pretty interesting as well. And it's supposed to fit your personality and your mood, and you can use it when you're texting people, and that's going to be really fun, I think. Also, there are 4 new Animoji: the koala, the tiger, the ghost, and the T-Rex. And also, for Animoji and Bitmoji, you now have tongue detection, so you can stick your tongue out and be able to have your phone detect that and show up on the Animoji. And there's also wink detection, which I didn't know about. They didn't mention that in the event, but it's on their website. There's also a new feature called Screen Time. So Screen Time is the main purpose of it is for parents trying to limit their kids' screen time, which I understand completely. In this day and age, kids can sometimes be really addicted to their phones. I know many adults are too, which is why you can also use it on yourself, on your own phone. You can restrict the amount of screen time you have for certain apps, or just get general insight into how often you're on your phone, how many notifications you get, how many times you go on your phone per day to reply to people or something like that. It just provides a lot more comprehensive insight into your daily phone routines, and I think it's very helpful and insightful for everyone to really take the time to do this. And I, for one, will be using screen time when iOS 12 comes out. And also, notifications are new in iOS 12. Finally, they started grouping notifications, so you don't have all these random notifications from the same app in all these different places. You just have it all in one pile, and it actually looks much nicer. It's like a 3D effect, and I think that looks really, really nice. I'm really excited to have that. Do Not Disturb has been updated too, so that you can have it set for only a certain amount of time. And there's also something called Do Not Disturb during bedtime, where you can dim your display and silence overnight notifications until you unlock your iPhone the next morning. And in the keynote, it actually looked very nice. There are a couple new augmented reality features as well, which I'm very excited for. Photos got a revamp. Now there's a For You tab where it will show curated photos and videos and memories from your camera roll that will be created by Siri based on your preferences and your favorites and things like that. And of course, I haven't covered everything. You can find a full list in the description below. The last thing I want to talk about is Siri shortcuts. So Siri shortcuts is probably one of my favorite features of iOS 12. Essentially what it is shortcuts that Siri will make either automatically, or you can set them for yourself and customize them so that they'll have specific actions on your phone, such as ordering something from Starbucks or calling an Uber or something like that. The specific action you might want to do on your phone will appear without you having to do anything, and Siri will figure out when to remind you to do these things based on the time of day, the place, and your daily routine. So Siri will learn and eventually be able to adapt. I think there's a lot of potential for this. Obviously, Siri is still nowhere near Google Assistant, but it's getting somewhat closer, you can say. It's a welcome improvement to Siri, and I'm happy to see what they do in the future. So my general thoughts on iOS 12, very conservative update, but very necessary, and I'm glad that Apple didn't completely skip over on all of the features this year. Like, they really introduced some interesting notable features that I think are going to be very useful and very fun to use in the fall. But yeah, it was a conservative update, but the performance and stability is supposed to be much, much better, especially in older devices. I have an iPhone 6s. I'm not sure if that counts as an older device, but even if it doesn't, it's not really like I have any performance issues anyway. I just hope they improve the battery life, because my battery dies like halfway through the day or even a quarter through the day. Like, I have to carry a 20,000 milliamp battery pack with me at all times at school. It's really terrible. Okay, now let's move on to macOS Mojave. So I'm not going to go through as many of the features as I did for iOS 12, because you can find full lists of that in the description below if you're curious. I'm just going to pick out the ones that I thought really stood out to me. First is dynamic desktop. So basically, this is probably my favorite feature of macOS Mojave. Basically, it's a normal wallpaper, except it changes throughout the day. As the day progresses in real life, your wallpaper will also progress through the day. I just hope they have more options besides the one they showed on the demo. Not that I have anything against it, I just hope they have more options to choose from, and maybe even get third-party creators to create some of these dynamic desktops. I think that would be really interesting. I also enjoyed the new dark mode. So this is probably one of the biggest changes of macOS Mojave that are visual. You can really see the difference. So there was a dark mode that was introduced back on OS X Yosemite, but this is much, much different in that it's a complete overhaul in dark mode. So now you not only have the menu bar and the volume bar and things like that in dark mode, you actually have the dock, the apps, the windows, everything is completely dark, and it makes for a great experience, especially if you have an iMac Pro, which I personally don't, but if you do, that it's probably a huge pleasure to work with a dark theme across the board on macOS, and I'm really excited to see this come. There was also 4 new apps that came from iOS that made it onto the Mac. The first one is News, the second one is Stocks, the third one is Voice Memos, and the fourth one was Home. So now you'll be able to do a lot more from your Mac, and I think it's pretty cool. Of course, Group FaceTime is also coming to the Mac. There's also a redesigned Mac App Store, so it looks a lot more like the iOS App Store, but actually it looks a little bit different, and I'm glad to see that Apple followed suit with revamping the UI on the App Store, similar like they did with iOS. And then the last thing I want to say about macOS, the last feature is probably the biggest feature for me, was continuity camera. So I was a little confused what this was at first, but I eventually figured it out. So basically, let's say you're working on a project in Pages on your Mac, and you want to take a picture and have that be on your Mac. It's kind of weird to use the camera, your webcam on your MacBook, so you actually want to use your phone instead, and your phone happens to be handy right next to you while you're working on your project. Basically, you can just pick it up, take a picture, and then without having to press any share buttons or anything, put your phone down, go back to the computer, and paste the photo in without having to do any sharing whatsoever. And this just shows that there's seamless integration between Mac and iPhone and iPad, and this handoff/continuity features are going to keep expanding, and I think this is a perfect application. I can see a lot of potential in this. I'm sure you can too, and I can't wait to see what they'll do with this in the future. So what are my thoughts on macOS Mojave? Well, essentially, I think again it's sort of a conservative update similar to iOS 12, but not nearly as conservative. I mean, we did get some meaningful new features. I didn't mention all the meaningful ones, so you'll have to check the link in the description below to see what I'm talking about exactly. But what I mean is just macOS Mojave has more intriguing features, and it shows that Apple really did put effort into making some things different in this version of macOS. So in that sense, I am very pleased with the way Apple has updated macOS Mojave. So now let's talk watchOS 5. So watchOS 5, again, not seriously updated features. I mean, you really don't get too much different with the new version of watchOS, just historically speaking. But some of the new features include auto tracking for workouts. So if you forget to start a workout on your watch, your Apple Watch will be able to detect when you start working out, and it will start counting the amount of calories you burn, etc. You can also start challenging your friends to certain things on Apple Watch, like competitions, multi-day competitions, and this will, I guess, motivate both of you to work out more. And you get a certain competition award when you complete your rings and win a competition that you're doing with your friend. So this is like a good motivator, I guess, for people who are athletes. You can also start listening to Apple Podcasts on Apple Watch with the addition of Bluetooth earbuds such as AirPods. There's also this interesting walkie-talkie feature. So now you can raise your watch and speak to someone who's also wearing an Apple Watch like a walkie-talkie without calling them. Can someone explain to me how that's different from just calling them? So those are things that really interested me about watchOS 5. Again, link in the description below to full list of all the new features of all these platforms I'm talking about. But in general, again, conservative update. This whole event was just conservative in general. watchOS, for one, was, I suppose it fulfilled expectations just because watchOS has just been very conservative updates in the past. They haven't done any major UI changes, but you know, again, change is change, so these are all welcome new features in watchOS 5. And then finally, tvOS. So I personally don't really care for this that much at all, as I don't have an Apple TV, but I do appreciate Apple TV for doing what it does, which is to provide a more modern and streamlined experience for watching TV in the Apple ecosystem. This is probably, like, I guess, the fewest changes out of all of the platforms, but you did get support for Dolby Atmos, which is a certain type of sound technology. So if you have the compatible sound bar, I think Samsung makes some nice ones, but a lot of other manufacturers make some nice sound bars that are compatible with Dolby Atmos. You can enjoy really nice audio. I believe they use Dolby Atmos audio in movie theaters actually, so that must be really nice. And then there's also some new sports channels, and then these new aerial wallpapers slash screensavers, you could say, that were taken from the International Space Station. I think that looks really interesting. I really did enjoy this event. There are certain Apple events in the past actually that have underwhelmed me and disappointed me. This didn't. Although this may not have fulfilled the public's expectations for what to expect from WWDC, I did think that, you know, there's nothing wrong with them not announcing any hardware, which a lot of people lamented about. You know, it's a software event for software developers, so it only makes sense that Apple will only announce new software that developers can harness for their apps. So I don't think it's a big deal in that respect. If you're going to talk about the conservative approach Apple took to their updates this year, I think it's just all in the name of like once again, performance and stability. There have been many confirmed reports that Apple is taking a year just to optimize the system and update all the technologies to the most current technology. So I really think that as long as this is all in the name of stability and performance, which Apple devices really need, I can definitely expect a lot of hardware announcements later this year in September, and a lot of big software announcements expect. I personally am almost positive about this. Next year, I keep saying this, but I feel like next year will be the year when Apple finally changes its UI in iOS, where they do a complete visual overhaul and the windows look different, the apps look different. The whole user interface just looks completely different. I am hoping, please Apple, you gave us a conservative iOS update this year. Please change the whole visual look of iOS 13, please. I'm almost positive already because this year is unusually conservative for Apple in terms of iOS updates, but who knows. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching my thoughts and impressions on WWDC 2017. And as always, I will see you in the next video when finals end. Thanks.